So we've got the sides cut, our shelves cut. We've got to cut the shelves to width, and then we'll be assembling this. And this is something where your cross cut or your square cut will work really well. You can line this right up and make your cut. Again, the width of our shelves are 34.5 inches. The one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, I have a crosscut sled, which you'll see in a second. I put it in like this. I set my fence to 34.5 inches. Now I'm going to cut not just my shelves, but I'm also going to cut the back, which is going to fit inside, and you'll see it when it kind of comes together. The reason why I set this fence and I use my crosscut sled is because 34 inches, whatever that number is, whatever the width that you decide, if you're off by a 1/16, it doesn't matter. But you want them to be exactly the same, because when it's all assembled, if this fence is a set fence, you know that it's going to make your assembly easier and it's going to make for a solid bookcase. Time to show you my favorite homemade woodworking jig, and that is simply the Crosscut Sled. It allows you to cross-cut longer material safely. You need support. Don't try to do this freehand. It makes much more sense. You get a much more accurate cut with a simple little jig like this. Crosscut sleds are great. You can use them over and over again, and they're cheap to make. The one thing I'm doing real quick is that there's a little bit of tear out on this because this is the manufacturer edge. I'm just going to cut off both sides a little bit because I made it for 36 inches. So I'll slice a little bit off this side. Get rid of that. That way I don't have any tear out. It's a nice clean 90-degree angle. I bring it over here. My fence is set at 34.5 inches. Alright, be smart. Do not attempt to make this cut without a crosscut sled. Do not try to freehand it. I reiterate, do not. Either use a crosscut sled or use a circular saw in your square cut. I make my crosscut. Done. Now this piece is exactly the same as this piece. And then this piece will be the same exact piece as the one before and the one after. The repetition is what is beautiful in this, because you can't mess up. It's like actually when you make a pocket hole, once you set the jig, you can't do it wrong because everything's set up to ensure that you don't do that. And that's what's sort of important when you're doing the sides or the shelves, I should say. Everything is exactly the same, which makes putting it all together a lot easier. Nobody likes problems. Nice to have things on wheels when you have a small shop. But you'll see, here's our sides, like this, like that. Actually, I might have to lay it like that. There's our bottom, and there's another one for the top, and then there's two more for the middle. Can't get any simpler. I'm going to drill some pocket holes in these. And here's a thing to consider. When you have plywood, you're going to have two different sides. You're going to have a nice side, which is the A side. And then for this type of plywood, you're going to have knots and stuff like that. This I'm going to make the inside. If you were staining this, you obviously don't want to use this sort of stuff, this sort of material. You would want to get a higher grade plywood. I can kind of get away with it a little bit, again, because I'm painting. But when you're actually cutting your pocket holes, take into consideration, if this is one of your shelves, you might not want that on the top. So be very, very clear that this is the top. Maybe take your pencil out, mark with the T. This is my top, or this is my side, or what have you. Kind of be a little bit more careful and picky when you're building it, because I think it really does show in the end. So, pocket hole time. Sides, we don't have any pocket holes in. So I'm going to get those out of the way. Boom. Our back does, because it's going to get inset. So all I did was put pocket holes all the way around the back, not the top and the bottom, just around the sides. You'll see it makes sense in a little bit why. Now for the shelves, we need to attach it to the sides. So we're going to put pocket holes here, here, and here. We're going to go 3 per. But we're also going to put them underneath here, so that way we can attach the face frame, which is going to be this detail across the front. That locks it in. Again, anytime that we can avoid using nails, biscuits, or anything like that, makes for a stronger frame, and then that way we don't have to fill those joints. The pocket holes will be hidden from underneath, again, which is really a good thing. So all the shelves are going to get pocket holes, 3 along the sides, and then probably 4 or 5 across the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Correct. So I'm going to cut all those now. The nice thing about the pocket holes is that you don't have to overanalyze where they are, where they go. You just have to make sure. Kreg recommends every 6 to 8 inches, but it doesn't have to be exactly 6 inches and exactly 8 inches. These holes are hidden. They're going to be underneath. So if you think about it, look, there's your shelf. Can you see underneath there? Shake your head yes or no. Well, there you go. You don't have to worry about it. You can plug them. They make a product so you can plug them. But for the most part, you can't see them. You've got a nice tight joint, and it doesn't matter if this is going to be right there or right there. If you're one of those people that really cares about that, sure, you can measure over 3 inches every 1 or 6 inches or whatever. But it's not necessary. It's going to be a good, strong joint. You add glue to that joint, and that ain't going nowhere. Now we can start doing a little bit of assembly, which is you'll see it start to take a shape, if you will. Put the shelves off to the side. Let's get the back out of the way. This part can be as simple or as hard as you make it. If you took your time and made sure that everything was nice and square and parallel and all that sort of stuff, then this is going to be very simple and very quick for you. If you didn't, this is where you're going to fight, and this is where you might give up, but I say don't give up. I'm here to inspire you to finish. Again, the one thing I'm taking into consideration, I want this to be my outside. I'll just put a big O on it right there, and you can see the difference. Outside, the inside's not as pretty, so I'll just put an eye there. This will be the inside, and then this will be the outside. And simply, all we're going to do is now take our shelves, which already have our pocket holes in them and are already drilled, and we line them up. We hold this just like this. We line it up flush, just like that. Now, actually I'll go over here so you can see it a little better. Let me move this out of the way. Now you can see that our shelf is actually short of our sides. Oh no. Oh no, you say. You didn't mess up. And the reason why it's like that is because if you look at this bookcase from the side, you won't see end grain. If I put this back, I don't know why I'm grabbing the biggest piece here, but if I put it on the back like that, you'd see the end grain, which isn't nice. Now what's going to happen is that by making this shelf a little bit shorter in width, or thinner if you will, then when the back goes on like this, it's going to be flush with this side, and it's going to lock it all in, which is going to be really important to keep your bookcase square, which helps you when you are putting your face frames on and all that sort of stuff. So all we're going to do now is pocket hold them all together. Now, if you've seen any of the other Kreg Jig videos, you've seen how to build workbenches and all that sort of stuff. A workbench for this is really important. The one thing that's super important is a flat top. I just use a piece of scrap MDF, and the reason is that I want the surfaces down here to be perfectly flush, because if they're not, if they're off like this, I don't know if the camera can see it, say they're off that much, and that's a little bit more than normal, what will happen is when you put your face frame on there, it won't sit flat, it won't give a good connection. So we want it flat. So make your life a little easier. Throw yourself down a nice flat surface. I like MDF because once I destroy it, I can throw it away and it's cheap and inexpensive. So now I can just glue that up, and for the lack of time on this one, if you're at home, use glue. It takes 2 seconds to put a little bit of glue on there and then actually clamp that together. And that brings me to another point. Let me see if I can make that stay. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. This is one of my favorite clamps, other than the traditional Kreg clamp, is that it's a right angle. So it fits right in that pocket right there. I make the clamp. Now I can actually screw that together, and I get a nice flush joint, and I can use that all the way down the bookcase. I like a different variety of drills. I like one that's called a drill driver like this, where it's basically drilling my pocket hole And then I like the difference between an impact and then a smaller one like this, just because lugging the big drills around all day long sometimes can get tiring. So this is great because it doesn't overdrive your pocket hole, or overdrive your screw. If you use an impact, which I'm not saying don't use an impact, but what I'm saying is if you use one, and I do use it, make sure that you know that when you reach the end, to stop, meaning that as soon as you hear that g-g-g-g-g-g from an impact, you stop. Because if you don't, what happens is that screw just keeps rotating in the hole, and that technically just bores it out. You're doing nothing more with this screw that you would be doing with this, and you want this to be a nice tight joint. So I like impacts, they're great, but just be very careful when you're putting together a bookcase like this that you don't overdrive that screw. Very important.